This podcast is dedicated to people who are ready to take ownership of what it means to be born with high sensory intelligence and how to bring it into service for business, career, and organizations globally. Hello, and a very warm welcome to another episode of the High Sensory Intelligence Podcast with me, Willow McIntosh, founder of Illuminance and leader of the High Sensory Intelligence movement. And this week I am excited to talk to you about the importance of normalizing this trait of high sensory intelligence. And last week I was talking a bit about why we tend to not associate with our gifts and abilities and not take ownership of our gifts and abilities in the way that we should do, in a way that helps us and helps us to bring our gifts into service. In other words, why is it that we're not, all of us, taking ownership of our gifts, and it's not something that we are naturally just aligned with in our lives? And that's very much to do with how we tend to be misunderstood as children and how the trait gets misinterpreted. And if you're interested in that, of course, then please do check out that episode. But this week, what I'm really interested in talking about, it is about this process of normalizing this trait. In other words, actually getting really honest and straightforward about what it means to be processing sensory data at the depth and to the level that we are processing sensory data. Now, many of us are experiencing the trait at a very high degree of sensitivity, and many of you know, I don't like using that word, but when we use it in the context of how high the sensitivity is geared to in terms of our ability to process sensory data more deeply, then in that context it does make sense. So there's very much a spectrum, there's a scale. Some of us are super highly sensitive in this context, and some of us are not quite so sensitive. Now, what I'm really alluding to here, in this piece that I really want to cover today, is about the fact that it's of no use if we walk around in our day-to-day lives, especially in our businesses, pretending that we are the same as other people that don't have the trait. And I know I've talked about this before, but this week I really want to just illustrate this from a viewpoint of many of the conversations and facilitations that I have with high sensory people. And as a result of the sessions and conversations that I have, one of the key outcomes is always about, I'm just so grateful that I've been able to start to talk about this, about the way that I experience the world and just how profound these abilities are that I have, and the fact that I've never been able to really talk about that before, and I've never been able to really consciously be aware of it to the degree that this kind of conversation is allowing me to have or to be, have or to do. So the way to really think about this is to remember that each of our senses are picking up sensory information on a moment-to-moment basis, of course. And what's happening with us is that we are processing that data at a cognitive level much more deeply than other people that don't have the trait. So what that means is, on a moment-to-moment basis, we are having an experience of the world around us that is very much as a result of that. So it doesn't just mean that we are seeing things more clearly or hearing things more loudly or smelling things more deeply. It actually means that we're having a cognitive experience at a much deeper level. We're having a deeper cognitive experience. Now, I'm in the process of writing an article about this. I'm writing about the reality of this trait and how there is this opportunity now for us to take the research and the science a bit deeper. And one of the pieces that I'm covering in there is the reality of the world around us and what the actual energetic reality of the world around us in terms of what our senses are picking up. So when we think about sound and how we're picking up noise around us, well, sound is made up of waves, light is made up of photons, and our internal feelings and emotions are that a part of that, of course, is energetic. Emotions are energy in motion, but also it is chemicals that are released in our brain that help us to experience and create our emotions. So when we think about the true nature of that, they are energetic realities. And just before I go on, sometimes I'm not 100% clear on the biology and the physics of things. You know, sometimes I perhaps might refer to something in the wrong way. When I talk about those chemicals, then I know that there are chemicals that are released in the amygdala, I think it is, that contribute to the experience of our emotions. So whilst I may not have the science exactly right, what I'm actually referring to is the energetic nature of the world around us, and that we know that's a scientific fact now. We know that when we point super strong electron microscopes at the world around us, we are now aware that it's made up of vibrations and energy around us. It's not a solid state. So that's what I'm referring to, and it's the same with our senses. So the sensory data that we're picking up, the light waves, the sound waves, the emotional reality of the feelings we're having inside of us, it's not solid. It's not. It's not. I want to say it's not an exact science. But what I'm alluding to here is that the nature of the world around us is it's an energetic reality. Now, if we are picking up sensory information that much more deeply, it means that we are picking up, we are diving a little deeper into the energetic reality of the world around us, and therefore we're going to be having a different experience of the world around us. There's some very interesting research that's been done on the pit viper, which is a type of snake, and the pit viper has an ability to sense the electromagnetic shape of someone using infrared. I'm pretty sure it's using infrared. So so what's happening is the snake has an ability to pick up information in the world that we can't pick up on, but that information is there in the world. So it's the same in the way that some animals can pick up infrared and see infrared, where they can pick up heat shapes and they can actually see infrared. So we can't see infrared, but that information is still around us in the world. So when it comes to processing data more deeply, it means that we have an ability to pick up more information in the world that's just there around us, that people with the trait don't have that ability. So whilst that is quite a complicated and a bit of a heady way to consider this point, what I'm really coming to is the fact that there is a reality that we are picking up this information more deeply. So we are receiving more sensory information. And the very nature of that simply means that we are having a different experience to other people in the world around us. And the trouble is when we're not properly taking ownership of that, when we're not finding the language to be able to explain that and talk about that and share it in a way that helps us to make sense of it and to take ownership of it, it's going to cause it's going to cause a disconnection to ourselves, because we're not able to truly talk about the experience that we're having in the world. And unfortunately what that means is we end up repressing things. We end up denying a part of ourselves that to us as high sensory intelligent people is incredibly important. It's the foundation to who we are and what we're all about, and especially the service that we're here to provide to ourselves and the world around us. So as a result of these conversations and facilitations I have with people, it then leads us to be able to talk about this sensory experience that we're having in the world, and often that is to do with a deeper relationship to the energetic reality of the world. It's a deeper relationship to the experience of love in the world. It's a deeper relationship to the values that we hold dear in the world. It's a deeper relationship to an ability that we have to read information in people, the high levels of empathy and intuition that we have. So it's about remembering that there's going to be a fundamental difference to how we're experiencing the world. And as a result of that, we need to be able to own that. It's important to take ownership of that. As a result of that, we can then start to have the conversations that we really want to have with other people in the world and in our communities and our families, to say, this is the kind of experience that I'm having. Now, what that does is it then opens us up to the reality of the gifts that we've got and what's most important to us. And typically what's most important to us is we want to serve in the world in alignment with these gifts that we have, that we want to be doing the coaching and consulting at the level that we know we can, bringing these gifts and abilities into play. So the fact that we're picking up more information about the people that we're talking to, about the world around us, and especially our relationship to the true nature of things, that all is a very, very important part of how we bring our gifts and abilities to the world, how we present ourselves to the world, how we can be of service in the world. So my real message this week is not to hide away from this. You know, it's not to try to normalize it. It's not to try to pretend that we are not having this profound experience of the world around us, to a greater or lesser degree, depending on where we are on the scale of sensitivity. So, you know, once we are more clear about this, it helps us to find the language, find sample sentences, as I like to call it, to be able to share this and be able to talk about it and to be able to open ourselves up to the people around us, and especially the people that we are born to serve, in a way that they can understand, so we can really come home to who we are and celebrate these amazing abilities that we have. Join me on the next masterclass, where I'll show you how to reveal your own high sensory intelligence, bringing you into alignment with your true purpose, career, business, and personal success. To register your place today, visit highsensoryintelligence.com.